everybody, welcome back to another episode of Redneck Racing. Today's video is going to be a little change of pace from all the chassis work we've been doing. Right now I'm actually working on the transmission. This actually isn't the transmission that's going in the Chevelle. I'm putting a Turbo 400 in the Chevelle. This is actually a 4L80E. I have a bunch of parts for the Turbo 400 laid out on the bench there, and the actual Turbo 400 case is right there. So you might be wondering what we're doing with this 4L80E if I'm building a Turbo 400. Well, in case some of you guys don't know, some of the parts out of the 4L80Es are pretty much directly interchangeable with the Turbo 400s. This is basically just a Turbo 400 with overdrive. So we're after the direct clutch drum and some of the parts for the intermediate clutch pack. The intermediate clutch pack splines into the direct drum, and the direct drum on these has a 34 element sprag, and it has a thicker or a wider sprag race, which makes it easier to stack 4 clutches into the intermediate clutch pack. So that's what we're after in this, and then pretty much the rest of this is just junk. This transmission is totally burned up. You can see the fluid down there is pretty much black, and it's supposed to be red. So probably keep this around for spare parts. I'm going to throw the clutches away probably. Hopefully the steels are still good. Hopefully the thin intermediate steels are still okay. Then I'm planning on putting those in that Turbo 400. And another thing I guess I could explain is why I'm gutting a 4L80E for parts instead of just buying the parts. I bought this 4L80E as a junk core basically for I think $200. You can find ththese for $150 to $200, and I'm going to use the direct clutch drum. I'm going to use some of the intermediate steels, for sure the intermediate pressure plate. I'm going to use the forward hub. So buying all those parts would cost a lot more than just buying a whole 4L80E and robbing the parts from it. Alright, I figure I would show you guys anything exciting that happens along the way here, or something that you might want to know if you're doing this, gutting a 4L80E for Turbo 400 parts. There's 2 center support bolts on a 4L80E. Turbo 400 just has one, which would be this one. 4L80E has another one up here, and that'll take out this entire overdrive clutch assembly and lug piece right here. This whole thing will come out, and from there back it's basically just a Turbo 400. I already have the whole overdrive assembly and planetary gear set out right there. All these clutches and this ring gear here should all come out once I take this bolt off, but you do have to take the valve body off first. So I just pulled this overdrive clutch unit out. That's how that all comes out. That's where that bolt was in there. And then it actually looks like this ring gear in here for the overdrive is connected to the forward clutch drum right there. Now I'm just going to pull that out. All this stuff should just pull right out of here. I can get at the parts I want. Alright, so I think I got all the parts taken out of this transmission, pretty much, that I think I need to get out of here. So I'm going to show you guys what parts I've gleaned from this and try and do a better job explaining why I'm wanting the parts out of the 4L80E instead of the ones out of the Turbo 400. So right here I have the direct clutch drum out of the 4L80E. Like I had said, it does have a 34 element sprag, and you want to look for transmissions apparently that are 1997 and up. Supposedly all have a 34 element sprag. This is an 01, so I knew I was good there. The thing that nobody tells you, the way to tell, I think, is where the transmission cooler lines are. So there's one right here, and then the other one is all the way back here. The earlier ones have both transmission cooler lines right next to each other. The late model ones, the 97 and up, have them far apart like that. If you're in the junkyard or somebody's selling one on Facebook Marketplace and doesn't know what it came out of, that's what you want to look for, where they're far apart like that. If you can't find the tag, that should tell you what year it was from. So back to what I was talking about here. The reason that I want this 34 element sprag versus the 34 element sprag that I already had in this Turbo 400, which I got lucky with, is that the sprag race right here is actually a little bit thicker. And what that allows me to do is more comfortably, and I say comfortably because you can do it with that sprag, to engage the 4 clutches that I want to put in the intermediate. The other reason I wanted the entire transmission was that I get the hardened forward hub that the 4L80E has. The reason you want a hardened hub is because your intermediate shaft, or I don't know, whatever you want to call this right here that hooks onto your planetaries, that splines into this right here. And with a hardened material, you run less a chance of that getting stripped out. I'll show you what I mean when I say hardened. You can actually hear the difference. If I can get this snap ring off. I'll try to keep things separate here. So what I was talking about with these forward hubs is you can kind of hear the difference. This is the Turbo 400 forward hub. Remember what that sounded like. This is the 4L80E forward hub. So you can hear this rings like a bell, where this one kind of has more of a dull noise to it. Probably still not as hard as an aftermarket hub if you were to get an aftermarket forward hub, but for what I'm doing right now, this is going to work great. It came with the transmission, it came with the parts that I really wanted, which was this right here, and the 4-clutch intermediate setup. So this is kind of just extra, and it's why I decided to just buy a whole transmission instead of just getting this clutch drum. You can buy 4L80E clutch drums on the internet, on Summit. I think Jegs has some too. Maybe find some on eBay. But they're like $150, $180 for the whole drum. I got this transmission for $200, and I got a forward hub. I got the pressure plate for the intermediate, and maybe I'll be able to reuse the steels for the intermediate. I'll have to see about that when I put the 400 back together. Here's what I'm talking about on the differences between the intermediate pressure plates. This is the pressure plate out of the 4L80E, and this is the pressure plate out of the Turbo 400. Oh, stay there. Okay. As you can see, this one is definitely thinner than that one, so that extra thickness you can take up with adding more clutches and steels. I was hoping that I could use the steels from this 4L80E, but they look really, really shot. And this has got to be the worst burned up clutches I think I've seen in a transmission. And I haven't taken apart a lot of transmissions. The reason the guy was selling it is because he said it was burned up. He was right. So I'm probably gonna have to get different steels, because you do, even though this is thinner, you do still need to run thinner steels. So I'll probably just end up getting a 4-clutch conversion, and I may not even end up needing to use this pressure plate, depending on the kit I get. And I'll try and show you guys here what I was talking about with the thicker spray grace deal a little bit. Here is the 4L80E drum with the 4L80E intermediate pressure plate and the 4L80E spray grace. And as you can see, there is, I guess, a very, very little gap between the top of the pressure plate and the splines on the spray grace there. But you can see that if you were to drop a clutch on here, there'd be really no way for this clutch to drop down and get between the pressure plate and the spray grace and get caught in that gap, that little gap that's down there. If I was to put the thinner pressure plate on the Turbo 400 to put 4 clutches in the intermediate, and I put one of the thin intermediate clutches on here, it still can't get in there, but you can see how much bigger the gap is in there. It doesn't really seem like this clutch would be able to get caught underneath there, but maybe if it wears in enough, it could, or if the pressure plate wears down too much. There's just a lot more engagement with the spray grace here than there is with here. GM made it a little bit thicker when they put 4 clutches in, and I'm going to assume they did that for a good reason. Well, everybody, I think that's actually going to do it for this video. I just wanted to make a really quick video of stripping this all down. I've got a little bit of a mess to clean up now, and then I'm going to go and assess what parts I found so that I know what else I need to order. I do already have a trans brake ordered for the Turbo 400. Hopefully pretty soon here I can get the rest of the parts that I need and combined with some of the parts from the 4L80, and we can try and put together a halfway decent transmission there that I'm hoping will be able to take about 1,000 horsepower. Make sure you guys stay tuned for that. We have one more chassis video coming out. We'll be finishing up the roll cage and taking that to inspection. Then we gotta start putting the motor together, and this is all gonna start coming together. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see any of the rest of the videos. If you want to see how all of this comes together, that way you won't miss out on any of that. See you guys in the next video.